Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
If you're drunk and you're driving, don't do that.
Remembering Lena Aguilar, the advocate for working class people killed in a suspected drunk driving crash. Also,
we're going to be in our post-pandemic world by this summer if things continue to go the way that we want them to.
With more vaccines arriving Monday, cautious optimism from BC's top doctor. And
I took extra time, hours actually, preparing for the midterm, and now everything is gone.
UBC accounting students accused of cheating. Why their professor is apologizing.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
good evening and thanks for joining us. A Burnaby grandmother known for her fearless spirit and community service is being remembered tonight.
Lena Aguilar was killed in a head-on crash in North Vancouver earlier this week involving a suspected impaired driver. As Zara Premji reports, Aguilar was a tireless supporter of working-class people.
Today, I woke up like thinking of another phone call from her.
But the phone won't ring today after 25 years of friendship.
Why she?
On Tuesday night, Marcelina Perdido Aguilar, known to her friends as Lena, was picking her husband up from work in North Vancouver when an Audi crossed the center line and smashed into her car, taking her life and sending her husband to hospital in critical condition. And RCMP believe alcohol was a factor.
My God, if you're drunk and you're driving, don't do that.
Beto Liaga met Lena on her first day in Canada in 1996, and they were inseparable ever since, spending time in Bet's garden and sharing stories. But now she's just left with memories that she poured into a letter to her dear friend after she died.
It often takes the death of a person for us to realize the significance of the person's life.
Grandmother, friend, and beloved teacher, she had just celebrated her 65th birthday, and friends say with her grandchildren in one hand, she always advocated for the underdog in the other. A volunteer at Migrante, BC, she fought for the rights of migrant workers.
Gentle soul, and one of these people that you would, she would never be loud, she would never be forceful, but she was a force, and always with a smile. And also, what made her special to me is she didn't just talk, she actually did the work.
She door-knocked for political campaigns. She worked at the Burnaby Citizens Association. If there was a chance for change to be made, friends say Lena was there.
I think Marcelina's legacy will be the people she supported to get them engaged. But what a hole she's left.
Family tells CBC News it's a legacy they intend to uphold in her honor.
She will be forever missed and forever loved. Paalam, Manang Lena, may you rest in eternal peace.
Zara Premji, CBC News, North Vancouver.
The jury at a BC coroner's inquest into the shooting death of Hudson Brooks has ruled his death a homicide.
But because it's not a criminal proceeding, it won't result in any charges. Brooks was shot 9 times by RCMP Constable Elizabeth Kucherin in a Surrey parking lot in July 2015. She was initially charged with aggravated assault and assault with a weapon, but those charges were stayed in 2017.
The inquest jury made 3 recommendations. They asked that the RCMP E-Division receive increased training, for the IIO to share their investigative findings with the RCMP so they can enhance training, and that the Solicitor General review the current standards and use of new technology such as tasers for such situations in the future. Some optimistic news out of today's COVID briefing. The first shipment of AstraZeneca doses will arrive in BC in the coming days.
Our Tanya Fletcher is here live tonight with the latest. So Tanya, who's going to be in line first to receive these newly approved vaccines.
That first AstraZeneca shipment will hit BC's doorstep next week and then go straight into the arms of essential workers. That will run on a parallel but separate track to the province's main age-based rollout with the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. Dr. Bonnie Henry acknowledges that essential workers covers a broad swath of people. So work is now underway to determine who exactly qualifies. She says BC will lean on both provincial and national guidance to set the parameters for which groups will be prioritized when, beyond first responders.
Now, I want to be clear, this is not a random process. This is not me making a decision out of the blue. We follow a very defined process. We will ensure that those groups are then sequenced and we put the operational pieces into place. So those recommendations I expect are coming to me in the coming days.
And based on that information, a detailed plan will be developed and made public by mid-March. In the meantime, the immediate AstraZeneca doses will target ongoing clusters and outbreaks.
Tanya, we also heard a rare apology from the provincial health officer today. Who was that directed at?
It was directed to everyone who was about to receive their second dose, but then suddenly had it canceled due to the new 4-month interval. So mainly long-term care residents, and most of them have had their second dose already, but some were still waiting when the province suddenly announced on Monday that it would immediately extend the window between doses to 4 months instead of 42 days. We heard anecdotes from the opposition in question period today about many elderly people left anxious and confused by the abrupt cancellation with no warning, but also about some healthcare workers upset with a lack of communication. One who showed up at a clinic for their scheduled second dose only to find the lights off and they weren't told. Well, today, Dr. Bonnie Henry said sorry.
I will regret and apologize to those communities, to the long-term care homes, and to individuals who had a second dose scheduled that had been postponed. And I know that came as a shock for many people. And I regret that our communications weren't able to keep up as fast as the decision making.
There was a glimmer of hope on that front, too, with the long-term care homes. It sounds like restrictions will be eased by the end of this month. And perhaps the most positive part of all, the line from Dr. Henry today that we should expect to be in a post-pandemic world by this summer. Mike, Tina?
Thank you very much. Tanya Fletcher reporting live for us tonight. Well, another 4 people have died from COVID-19 in our province. That news comes as BC numbers show signs of returning to the levels we saw at the beginning of the year when it appeared that cases were trending downward. With 564 new cases since yesterday's update, the rolling average is now at its highest point since January 13th. Active cases have also matched the total for that day. Hospitalizations at highest point since February 5th. 64 people are in critical or intensive care.
And here's some encouraging news if you use public transit in Metro Vancouver. Seems copper kills almost all bacteria on high-touch surfaces. Results of a TransLink pilot project during the pandemic suggest copper products killed up to 99% of all bacteria within 1 hour of surface contact. TransLink says it's the first transit agency in North America to put the metal to the test.
So these results are really encouraging and they really shape how we are going to go into phase 2 of this project. We'll have more to say about phase 2 in the coming months, but passengers can look forward to seeing more copper on more transit vehicles across our system for a much longer period of time.
The first phase of that pilot project involved just 2 buses and 2 SkyTrain cars. The next phase will involve more vehicles.
More than 600 accounting students at UBC's Sauder School of Business will all have to retake an exam after allegations students searched for answers online. And students who completed the exam without cheating say they're being punished during an already stressful term. As Eva Gwensenj explains, some say the instructions for the online exam were unclear.
Hours cramming for a midterm worth 30% of their grade down the drain.
I've put in hard work, I've spent the money, I took extra time, hours actually, preparing for the midterm, and now everything is gone.
CBC has agreed not to name the second-year student out of concern of academic repercussions. He was one of 670 students to complete the online open book accounting exam on February 10th. A week later, the professor for the class, Kyla Gunderson, told students that a number of incidents of academic misconduct had been found and that a formal investigation was underway. She alleged some had worked together on the midterm and others had used paid study websites like Chegg to search for answers. Before the midterm, the professor said students were free to use their textbook, notes, Google, or anything during the test.
Especially looking at the words Google and anything, that really means anything that I am able to find.
In an emailed statement, the Associate Dean of Students at the Sauder School said the rewrite was the fairest option for all students. He said, "While we are empathetic that this does carry a burden for students during an already busy time of year, this re-examination will add clarity for all students on how to properly complete the new exam and will ensure a level playing field to assess students." A professor in Alberta says educators are stuck between a rock and a hard place.
So when you have 600 students, you either need ways to grade them quickly, or you need teaching assistants who can help you grade more creative ways of assessing. But I don't think that the increase in class sizes online has been met with support for profs in the terms of like, can we have an army of teaching assistants to help with this course?
Gunderson has apologized for the unclear instructions. The professor has faced backlash from some students.
A bunch of people are upset about the midterm situation, so they send these death threats, and it's pretty disgusting.
The date of the makeup midterm has not been scheduled, but the dean says the school will consider the overall exam schedule in deciding when to hold it. Eva Yugwen-Senge, CBC News, Vancouver.
A fiery debate is raging about the Vancouver Park Board's motion to bring back a temporary bike lane in Stanley Park. The Park Board says it's in an effort to reduce carbon emissions by limiting the amount of vehicle traffic. Urban planners say that the bike lane would allow for better social distancing. But small businesses are speaking out against the motion. Last summer, the bike lane increased bicycle ridership by 180%, but it also led to traffic congestion and a drop in Stanley Park tourism.
They haven't said how much carbon is going to be saved by having one lane because there isn't any. So then it just becomes a justification to giving a small group all access and the large group no access.
The Vancouver Park Board will decide on the motion on Monday.
A man has died after a camper van caught fire at Beacon Hill Park in Victoria early this morning. It broke out at about 8 a.m. in the downtown park. Firefighters found the body after the fire was put out. It's the second death in Beacon Hill Park in the last 24 hours, and the Major Crime Unit is investigating.
The federal NDP and the Burnaby Fire Department are urging Ottawa to cover the safety costs of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion project. They say the project's emergency plans aren't sufficient, and it would require $8 million to ensure proper protocols are met.
This is a federal project. We understand that. My understanding is that this project, if it goes forward in the design that is proposed, it will create real risk to the community.
Around 30,000 people live near the tank farms, and Burnaby Fire says that the current plan doesn't allow efficient response time for first responders. They're proposing a fence line to be built to prevent fire growth. The city of Burnaby says the federal government has been unresponsive with the request, and the city doesn't have the capacity to cover the cost.
Well, several high-magnitude earthquakes off of New Zealand's coast had residents along our coast on alert. Tsunami alarm sounded after a magnitude 8 earthquake hit the area. It followed two that were both a magnitude above 7. Thousands of people were evacuated to higher ground on the coasts and on low-lying islands. Earthquake monitors in BC assessed the risk, and the all-clear was given early this afternoon. Our Johanna Wagstaff on assignment this week. Once again, Nick Czernkovich filling in, and a lot of nervous people on this coast, Nick, after those big quakes off New Zealand.
Yeah, no doubt. And, you know, in addition to those quakes that we were seeing, every sort of 20 minutes to 30 minutes, they're getting these aftershocks. And now slowly those aftershocks are getting weaker and weaker, but still we're seeing them even at this hour. I think at last check, They had one just maybe about 30 minutes ago or so. So that's going to continue as we head through tonight. But at this point, they are reducing in magnitude, which is the good news in all of that. In terms of our weather, what we're talking about is the rainfall. We had rain move in through the afternoon, around about 3 p.m. or so. That'll be the story as we head through tonight. It's not just the rain, though. It's going to be the winds as well. Wind warnings in effect across coastal sections of BC. Wind gusts could be up to about 110 kilometers per hour. Some areas around the north coast and even the central coast and on the west coast of Vancouver Island. However, that being said, exposed areas in the Strait of Georgia, expecting to see wind gusts tomorrow up to about 60 kilometers per hour. So breezy weather in store. We're going to see the first wave of rainfall through tonight, and then it sort of tapers off. By tomorrow morning, we'll get another push of rainfall, and then again, a few showers on and off as we head throughout the weekend. And what we're looking at there really is just on and off rain for the next few days. And that is a look at the forecast as we head through the next 24 hours. So to quote Mike from yesterday, I'm looking forward to Monday. We've actually got some good weather in store once we get through this. We'll have full details on that coming up in just a bit.
Wow, what an honor. I never get quoted for anything.
Yeah, well,
so
there you go.
thanks,
Looking
Nick.
forward to Monday.
Okay, we'll talk to you again in a little bit. See you then. Well, in Vancouver, it's geese who reign over much of our green space, and the city can't keep up with the birds' population size. And that's why the Park Board is asking the public to help control the birds by finding and reporting nests and not feeding them.
We know that they have impacts in parks. They tear up turf when they're eating it. They have excessive amounts of droppings. A goose poops every 9 minutes while it's eating. They dig up sprinkler heads to get water in the dry season, and they erode shorelines.
City staff are developing a Canada geese management plan. Right now, they use a population control technique called egg addling, a process of shaking, freezing, or covering goose eggs in oil after they are laid. The eggs are then placed back in the nest to reduce the chances of the bird laying more eggs. But stopping these urban birds won't be easy. Researchers say they've adapted over time, building nests away from parks and closer to private homes. Our GP Mendoza caught up with an expert last July to talk about the history of geese here in Metro Vancouver and why there are so many of them.
They're hard to miss around Metro Vancouver. Canada geese, gaggles of them, crowding parks, beaches, the seawall, and even the streets. So why are these iconic birds always flocking around our public spaces? Urban biodiversity planner Jennifer Ray Pierce says goose populations were actually reintroduced to Metro Vancouver in the 1970s for hunting and consumption. However, unlike their native cousins, these geese don't migrate, and they like our parks and beaches just as much as we do.
The main reason is that geese enjoy a lot of the same habitat features that people do. So nice low-cut lawns, sloping, gently sloping areas with little ponds are just perfect for geese.
There are no exact numbers on the number of geese that live here year-round, but Pierce estimates the number could be higher than 2,600, and that amount of geese feeding and living in the city leads to a lot of poop.
So Canada geese do produce more poop in volume for the amount of food that they eat than most species do. It's just because their digestive system is not very efficient.
And what about all that waste getting into our water? Pierce says not to worry about it.
People are always concerned about the impacts of goose species on water quality, and particularly as E. coli numbers are sometimes reported as being at unsafe levels. But actually what's been found is that even in areas where geese are physically relocated, the E. coli numbers don't change in any real measurable way. So the thinking is that the E. coli source is not primarily geese, but something else.
So what is the city doing to keep them under control?
So the primary management technique that's used right now in Vancouver is called egg addling, and that's where shortly after the eggs are laid, they're sterilized. The other techniques that work really well is changing the landscape so that it's not as desirable of a place for geese by introducing more shrubbery, or even temporary fencing around water bodies can help in particular high traffic areas.
Some BC cities are also looking at allowing goose hunting permits to tame the population, because if you didn't know before, the Canada goose is, in fact, edible.
Okay, Well, that explains a lot. Every 9 minutes, eh?
Yeah, you know what?
Flawed digestive system.
Yeah, and now that I know that, I kind of feel bad for them. More poop per volume of food.
Yeah, it adds up. It sure does.
For sure. Well, here's a reminder. You can also watch our newscast live on CBC Gem.
CBC Vancouver is also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.
Well, if your Air Canada flight was canceled due to the pandemic and you didn't get a refund but a voucher, you may be getting your money back after all. What it's going to cost the Canadian government next.
You have questions about the vaccine, and we want to hear from you. Join us for a very special CBC British Columbia Town Hall, Our Shot, Vaccinating BC, on March 10th at 7 p.m.
And at 6:19, thanks for staying with us during our commercial-free live stream tonight. Well, a Toronto high school student took her passion for activism and turned it into a real statement piece, an anti-pipeline themed jacket.
It was created through a special program that partners with Canadian fashion industry professionals to make prototypes into products. Talia Ricci spoke to the students about why they love the program.
We had to pick like an activism message that was something like we believed in, like personally, and I picked like my jacket is anti-pipeline. I'm very much against it for several reasons, so yeah, I just thought it was a good message.
In what ways is the pipeline like weaved into the design of the jacket?
The reflective blue was supposed to be kind of like oil spill type. That was always an idea I really liked. The inside textile is actually a blueprint for like a pipeline that like kind of makes a bit of like a cross pattern, but it says warning, harmful to wildlife and stuff. And it's supposed to just kind of represent the fact that like it's still kind of like in the planning stages and you can still do something about it. Like it's still kind of a blueprint. The patch in the back is like two skeletons holding up an I Heart Canadian oil and gas sign. The patch was kind of like a bit of my humor, I guess. I made sure that the coat was like a unisex design.
Maybe someone can put the hood up. It's like we have this army of support team behind us now, and we're continuing to grow every year. So we see the students grow, we see our mentorship base grow, and we're just really creating really exciting projects.
I think that this gives students the real views, especially when it comes to fashion. It's a very hands-on field, and programs like these that actually put students to the test and give students a chance to experience like real work.
How has it impacted you?
So the jacket project has given me so many skills. I figured out how to use Photoshop, and I was able to use something I was really passionate about, which is the theme of diversity, and I took that and created a jacket with it.
What did you gain from seeing your idea come to life like this?
The first time I saw it was still really weird, like feeling it and like putting it on, because like in my mind it was still just like this little picture that I drew.
Do you think this experience has maybe impacted what you'd like to do in the future?
I mean, activism is always a really big part of my life. It's something I pretty strongly believe in. I think it's kind of like our tax for living here.
A unique initiative there, for sure. Okay, coming up in just a couple of seconds, you may have heard the federal government and Canada's airlines are working on a bailout package, and if they can figure things out, it might mean refunds if you had an Air Canada flight canceled because of the pandemic. There are a lot more details on that coming up. Until then, enjoy this live shot of soggy downtown Vancouver.
Well, talks on a rescue package for Canadian Airlines are said to be in their final stages.
And Air Canada may be prepared to pay back passengers for flights canceled because of the pandemic. But as Ashley Burke tells us tonight, there is still some turbulence.
Please follow social distancing rules.
It's an industry in pain, cutting regional routes and workers as the pandemic stretches on, decimating air traffic. But sources say the government is close to reaching a deal with airlines to help.
My understanding is the solution is imminent, but frankly, I thought it was imminent over a month ago. So we'll see where this thing ends up, but it's got to get done quick.
Jerry Dias represents 15,000 airline workers. He says talks with the government are over a $7 to $9 billion package in low-interest loans for the industry, and there are conditions.
I do know firsthand that Air Canada has already committed to repay the customers that are quite frustrated over receiving their money back.
A sign of negotiations progressing.
We've been really clear that refunds are a precondition to any deal.
Some Air Canada passengers relieved.
Elated. I mean, it's good to hear that there is some light at the end of the tunnel.
Sean Lee Hyung's out $700. His Air Canada flight to Barcelona for a friend's wedding canceled due to COVID-19. He spent the last 9 months trying to get his money back with no luck.
I do have concerns if it will happen, but it's sort of, at least it's hope. Before there was none.
The Business Council of Canada's concerns are that Canadian airlines are falling behind other countries where governments have already provided packages, and say that could hurt customers later.
I think it's really, really important that Canadians are aware that the choices that they had before, the price competitiveness that they had before, will not be there for them the more these airlines are on life support.
That could mean fewer airlines flying, fewer routes, and prices much higher than before.
Ashley Burke reporting from Ottawa tonight. Well, after more than 40 years behind the bench, a junior hockey coach in Ontario was suddenly suspended earlier this year.
A player and his family complained after receiving dozens of inappropriate emails and text messages.
They've agreed to protect their identities because they are concerned about backlash. Jonathan Gatehouse takes us through the story.
She only discovered it by chance. An email left open on the family computer to her 20-year-old son from his hockey coach.
Some things sort of struck me. There was language usage and content that was not appropriate.
It turned out to be only one of many concerning emails Bernie Lynch sent to his young charge. The last thing I think of when I go to sleep at night, and the first thing I think of when I wake up is you, reads one email. Passionately missing you. I love you, he signs off. Dozens of unwanted messages, up to 50 in one day, cajoled, threatened, and pleaded. My stomach and heart ache. I miss you so, said one text.
He said I was his quote-unquote best friend, but I think he wanted more than that because the way he spoke and the way he was texting and whatnot, it sounded more like I was a lover than a friend.
Just one ticket? Yeah. At first, the player thought Lynch wanted to help him. Then he says things got more intense. The coach pressured him to hang out at his apartment and became angry when the player refused.
This, to me, seems predatory. It is completely in violation of a coach-player relationship and the way in which a coach should communicate to a player, and this is not right.
On January 1st, the player's parents sent the team president an email outlining their concerns, sharing the texts and emails. The next day, Lynch was suspended without pay and ordered to have no contact with players. Hockey Canada, the sport's governing body, is investigating, but to date, neither the player nor his mother have been contacted by anyone from the organization. Hockey Canada declined to explain why that is, or to provide CBC News with any details of its investigation. CBC News has spoken to a number of Fort Frances players who shared other concerns about Lynch, detailing bullying behavior and his use of sexually charged language and slurs during practices and in the dressing room. When asked about all of these allegations, Lynch declined to speak to CBC News and says he has yet to be contacted by anyone involved in the investigation. We've been looking back at Bernie Lynch's career, which spans more than 4 decades and involves teams across Canada, the US, and Europe, and we've learned of similar allegations in the past, including a police investigation 20 years ago in Saskatchewan, which did not result in charges. We'll have more on all of this in the coming days.
CBC's Jonathan Gatehouse reporting from Toronto tonight.
Canadian women seeking compensation for a controversial birth control device that many say left them in devastating pain can expect a fight. While the company that made the device has settled for more than $1 billion with women in the U.S.
As Vicadopia reports, a fifth estate investigation has found the company has no plans to offer the same relief to Canadian women.
After Carrie Paunace was implanted with Escher in 2012, she says pain started within months.
I didn't know I was going to be stuck in my bed for as many years as I was, and Escher is like the worst thing I've ever been through.
Unlike tubal ligation surgery, implanting Escher coils is relatively fast and easy. Removing them is not.
My uterus has been taken out. I'm upset because I feel like there's still a part of me missing, right?
Critics say disclosing reports of side effects has long been a problem with Escher. Even as recently as last summer, Escher's owner's Bayer was found to have sat on thousands of women's complaints of injuries that it failed to disclose in the U.S. They came out only after U.S. women filed lawsuits against the company. Bayer disputes it was obliged to make the complaints public.
If we had have known that there were many patients who were experiencing difficulty, we could have been looking into this and investigating it much more diligently.
More than 700 women across the country have gone after Bayer Canada for compensation. The company doesn't admit any liability despite pulling the device off the market in 2017. In the U.S., the company agreed to pay $1.6 billion to settle thousands of lawsuits. But in a statement to the Fifth Estate, it said the settlement in the U.S. reflects a commercial decision. It has no impact on pending Canadian litigation, and Bayer intends to defend itself vigorously. The Canadian women's lawyers expect to see the company in court.
Just to get some sort of justice for these women who have lost so much.
As for Carrie Paunace, she's at least recovered an important part of her life. Vic Adopia, CBC News, Toronto.
And No More Tears, the Escher legacy, airs tonight on CBC television at 9 and streams on CBC Gem.
Quarantine lockdown has put victims of domestic violence at risk.
Yesterday, the Quebec Premier addressed the province's recent surge in femicide. But as Sarah Levitt explains, many say the solution needs more than lip service.
I was shocked. I couldn't believe it.
The murder of a woman in Laval, Quebec is sending shockwaves as far as Haiti. From Port-au-Prince, Carol Pedre says he can't believe his friend Marie-Edouard is dead. The last time he saw her was this summer when the Haitian woman visited to celebrate her recovery from COVID-19.
She survived COVID. She was like, I have to do a photo shoot because I want to live my life right now.
2 weeks ago, the 32-year-old was shot dead outside her apartment building. Just 48 hours earlier, she'd gone to police to report a threat on her life. Edouard is just one of 5 women who have been murdered in Quebec in the past month alone. Yesterday, Premier François Legault addressed the issue at the start of a health briefing.
Il y a rien de masculin.
Not mincing words, Legault said he was speaking directly to men, telling them there is nothing masculine about violence against women. Now, women's groups across the province have a message of their own for Legault. They want action.
It's useless for me that Prime Minister Legault says it's a shame. It's a shame for the men. It's a shame for Quebec government not to act.
A rise in violence against women isn't just a Quebec problem. The Assaulted Women's Helpline says at times it's fielding almost twice the number of calls from across the country. The pandemic is a major factor.
Women are in an extremely precarious situation because they're doubly isolated. They were isolated before, but now they can't even go out. We can't go out after a certain time. We can't go to another region. We can't escape.
As for Marie-Edouard, police are still investigating but have yet to arrest a suspect.
The police or whoever was working on that case didn't take her seriously or didn't maybe believe her.
A mistake, he says, that ultimately led to her death. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
Canada has implemented new COVID-19 testing protocols at 11 more land border crossings with the United States. On arrival in Canada, non-essential travelers will have to provide 2 self-administered COVID tests. The tests are in addition to mandatory proof of a negative test that was taken within 72 hours of arriving at the border, plus the 14-day quarantine is still mandatory. 2 self-testing kits will be provided to non-essential travelers when they cross into Canada. 1 test has to be performed on day 1 of a person's arrival, and it can be done in a facility set up at the border crossing. The second test must be done on day 10 and can be mailed or couriered to a lab. The process is now in place at 16 land border crossings with the U.S. Officials say essential travelers won't need to go through this. It will be business as usual for them.
And March is a key month for COVID-19 vaccine shipments to our country. Close to 2 million doses are arriving from Pfizer-BioNTech alone. That has one expert feeling optimistic about the months ahead.
I really do think that as 2021 continues to go on, we're going to see getting back to a normal life. Summer's going to look a lot better than it did last year for sure. More freedom of different events and different types of activities. Maybe not concerts just yet, but we're about to get there.
Health Canada has also authorized a change in how the Pfizer vaccine is handled in Canada. It can now be stored and transported in a standard freezer for up to 2 weeks.
Prince Philip's hospitalization has some royal watchers calling for a planned television interview with Harry and Meghan to be postponed.
As Margaret Evans reports tonight, the interview is expected to stir more controversy and put a harsh spotlight on the royal family.
How do you feel about the palace hearing you speak your truth today?
A teaser for the Oprah Winfrey interview with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, better known as Harry and Meghan. Even before the ads started appearing, media reports here had the royal family bracing itself for a coming storm, and it arrived early.
Shocking things here.
This promo shows Meghan accusing the family and the institution around it of lies.
I don't know how they could expect that after all of this time, we would still just be silent if there is an active role that the firm is playing in perpetuating falsehoods about us.
Good evening, Meghan. The interview will also touch on Harry's acrimonious relationship with the British media and the blame he places on the tabloids in particular for hounding his mother, Princess Diana, something he says he feared seeing repeated with Meghan.
Yesterday, the Times newspaper here published a story about alleged bullying complaints against Meghan by former aides. That prompted a response from the palace, which issued a statement saying it's very concerned about the allegations and pledging to investigate them.
Effectively, you have sanctioning from the Queen to launch an investigation into allegations against her grandson and his wife in terms of bullying. It couldn't be more serious. It couldn't be more high stakes.
Does the Queen know?
Just last week, Harry was seen cavorting on a double-decker bus in Los Angeles in another high-profile interview, talking about Zooming with his grandparents. This week, his and Meghan's representatives were accusing Buckingham Palace of orchestrating a slur campaign against them. No one seems to be playing happy families anymore.
We're certainly seeing in the last few weeks an unbelievable decline in what was already a really strained relationship.
And all happening in the middle of a global pandemic. Britain still frozen in lockdown. It's not ideal timing, especially with Harry's 99-year-old grandfather, Prince Philip, still in hospital. Buckingham Palace saying today he'll stay there for now after undergoing a procedure for a pre-existing heart condition. Margaret Evans, CBC News, London.
Well, we've all watched schools scramble to adapt to COVID-19 times, but what about other classes? Coming up next, how language and cultural classes are trying to stay safe and engaging.
National with Knowlton Nash.
A sun-drenched community in California has developed a powerful thirst for Canadian water and a plan to get it. The Santa Barbara area has been battling drought for years. Last night, it finally decided the best solution is to import fresh water from British Columbia's Toba Inlet. The plan is to move the water by tanker, but there are some concerns that it could be a risky way of quenching California's thirst. Ian Hannah-Mansing reports.
It just keeps getting drier, and as reservoirs in California get dangerously close to empty, people there are nervous.
Well, what's going on now is really nothing short of a natural disaster.
One place is looking northward for relief. Last night, the Water Board of Goleta, near Santa Barbara, decided to negotiate a contract to import tanker ships full of water from British Columbia. They want the deal done in 2 weeks.
There's an awful lot to deal with. It's probably one of the largest expenditure issues this district's dealt with, at least in the last 3 years and probably in the last 20.
This is where the water might come from. A cold, fresh glacial stream about 200 kilometers north of Vancouver. If it all works out, a tanker would leave here about 3 times a month.
We're very, very proud of it, and we're proud to be the first ones.
It seems like the perfect fit. A state that desperately needs water, a province that some say has more than enough. But completing this deal might be tricky. The BC Environment Minister says Snowcap, the water company, can't get the proper permits before the 2-week deadline is up.
It's not possible to be ready in that short of a time. It's a very complex area with lots of implications that have to be addressed.
Among the implications, how would diverting some fresh water from a stream affect the environment? And how would it affect native land claims in the area? And to complicate matters, a rival water company says it wants the contract and already has the permits to get water from another part of BC.
We know we can do it. We know it's easy. We can do it in a short length of time and from a very environmentally sound site.
The Goleta Water Board knows the BC solution to this drought might be complicated, but the members say they need water from somewhere soon. Ian Hannamansing, CBC News, Vancouver.
And that's The National for Friday, March 15th. For CBC News, I'm Knowlton Nash. I'll be back tomorrow with Saturday Report and The National. Now, The Journal.
Some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Lena, as she's fondly called, was kind, caring, principled, and fearless.
Tributes are pouring in tonight for Lena Aguilar. She's the woman who was killed in a suspected drunk driving crash in North Vancouver late Tuesday night. Her husband was seriously injured. Aguilar is being remembered as a powerful advocate for the working class. The driver of the other vehicle survived. Police are continuing their investigation.
I will regret and apologize to those communities, to the long-term care homes, and to individuals who had a second dose scheduled.
A lot of those people were expecting their second dose shot this week. But the decision to delay the time between first and second doses by 4 months means they won't. But with a third vaccine arriving in BC on Monday, she's cautiously optimistic we're going to be in a post-pandemic world by this summer. That's if things go according to plan.
I've put in hard work. I've spent the money. I took extra time, hours actually, preparing for the midterm. And now everything is gone.
A UBC accounting class has been told to redo a midterm exam after students were accused of cheating online. Their professor has apologized for giving them unclear instructions. He said students could use Google or anything in an open book exam. They still have to retake the test.
Well, just as schools have had to make all kinds of changes to become pandemic safe, so have other kinds of classes, like Mandarin language studies here in BC.
Deanna Sumanak-Johnson shows us how 3 programs across the country are also overcoming hurdles to keep kids engaged.
Masked and distanced, they're learning all about their family's culture. This Greek language school used to teach 1,000 kids all over Toronto. Since the pandemic, it has just 400 students, some learning online, some in person at the Greek Cultural Center. Tough changes to make, but necessary, says its director.
We did cap the size of our classes to 10 students. We are really going above and beyond what Toronto Public Health is asking us, because for us, it was more important to keep these schools open and working.
Language and cultural schools across Canada have had to deal with some of the same challenges as public schools and a few extra hurdles, like figuring out where to hold classes, with some of the usual places no longer an option.
In Calgary, this imam decided to move Arabic language and Islamic studies classes entirely online. He felt keeping distance and sticking to the rules in schools was enough pressure on the kids.
So we didn't want to add to that stress and exacerbate and aggravate whatever they're dealing with. So we said, look, you go to school during the day, you come home, let's have your evening classes online.
Dalton. But keeping students engaged during the pandemic isn't easy, whether online or in person, where wearing a mask can get in the way of teaching language.
I tend to express a lot with my facial expressions, and like when I'm wearing masks, they will feel me less or like in like a slower pace. So like I will try to kind of adapt to that a little bit.
Still, for many, the hurdles are worth it.
I like about there's a recess and you could learn different letters. So
some normalcy and some fun in a year where both are sorely needed. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
It's quick cash when you need it most, but that money comes with a price, and a high one. Why the government is being pushed to deal with so-called predatory lenders, coming up.
And just coming up on 6:45 Thursday night, a live shot of downtown Vancouver tonight, BC Place there. Well, as Nick said it would, the rain arrived on the south coast this afternoon. The question is, how long is it going to stick around? His forecast is coming next.
One of the most exciting moments I had filming for The Nature of Things was when we were in Masai Mara following a pride of lionesses. 4 sisters and their 7 cubs. We had been following them for a week, and they had not been able to kill anything to eat, and the cubs were so hungry. We were getting so worried until one day we were by a narrow river crossing, and we saw a herd of wildebeest. And one by one, we saw the sisters working in unison. It was just a flurry of hooves and claws. And finally, the sisters caught something, and they were able to go back and get the little babies who were so hungry, and they all shared a very well-deserved dinner. So when I was 8 years old, I went to Borneo with my dad when he was making a documentary about Dr. Galdikas, a trailblazing scientist working all the time to save the endangered orangutans of Indonesia. I was a production assistant on this film. I was just carrying water bottles for the crew, and I was running as fast as my little legs would take me. 28 years later, I was back in Borneo with my dad again, but this time I was also a director, and we made a film together about how Dr. Galdikas is still out there saving the orangutans every day. We were at an orangutan orphan sanctuary. We were allowed to go see these little babies, and they were just a barrel of laughs. They would just jump all over you, and I'm pretty sure they ruined several $100s of equipment, but it was all worth it. Like so many Canadians, I grew up watching The Nature of Things, and David Suzuki was a household name. And so when we went to Rwanda and we were filming She Walks with Apes, Mountain Gorillas, I was telling people, I said, oh, well, we're from this show in Canada called The Nature of Things. They said, oh, no, we know, with David Suzuki. So it's not just Canadians whose lives this has touched. The natural world around us is absolutely incredible, and there are just stories that you can't find in fiction. And it's so exciting every week to tune into The Nature of Things, and that's why it's lasted 60 years.
You have questions about the vaccine, and we want to hear from you. Join us for a very special CBC British Columbia Town Hall, Our Shot, Vaccinating BC, on March 10th at 7 p.m.
For some, high-interest payday loans can seem like a lifeline, quick cash when you need it most. And in a pandemic economy, more people are having to rely on them.
But with interest rates on those loans sometimes near 50%, pressure is mounting on the government to take action against so-called predatory lenders. Diane Buckner has more.
Patricia Edwards didn't qualify for a bank loan, so when her two daughters needed help to pay their bills, she took a $3,000 installment loan from a payday lender.
So I was like, okay, let's see if I qualify for the loan because I'm working at the hospital.
Now she's out of work and struggling to pay a 47% interest rate on top of her own bills.
If I could get a $10,000 Visa card for 19%, I would get the Visa card and go pay them all off, and then I'll only owe 19% on the Visa card.
This borrower, who wants to keep her identity confidential, also turned to a payday lender after she couldn't get a bank loan to support her sick mother.
Bills were piling up because she was out of work for so long, so I figured I would take the loan to at least help with our rent.
She too lost her job during the pandemic and was forced to refinance. Now she's struggling to stay on top of 3 high-interest loans. In a statement to CBC News, the group that represents many of these lenders says its members are highly regulated and licensed under provincial legislation across Canada, and that unsecured loans are costly to provide. Acorn Canada, a national agency that advocates for low-income people, has been stepping up pressure, urging the federal government to limit what alternative lenders can charge.
A lot of people are taking out these loans to buy food, to pay their rent.
It is urgent.
This senator says she intends to launch a bill that would cap interest rates at 20%.
Canada is like a gold mine to these institutions because of the current state of legislation we have in place.
On the first day.
But Patricia Edwards is among those calling on Ottawa to take action more urgently.
Hopefully, we can get the attention of those who have more power than us.
She hopes to see new rules announced in the upcoming federal budget. Diane Buckner, CBC News, Toronto.
Our Johanna Wagstaff is on assignment this week, but we have meteorologist Nick Czernkovich with us. And what did you call it earlier, Nick? Impulse of moisture ahead?
Yeah, that's right, I did. Trying to come up with creative ways of describing the weather, right? I mean, the simple term is rain, but we've got this push of moisture that's moving in tonight, another round of rainfall, if you will, and yeah, that's your impulse of moisture. It's going to move through the overnight period tonight. So we saw the rain move in around 3 p.m. this afternoon, and then it's tapered off to sort of showers, but we've actually got more in the way. If you look on the satellite and radar image here, you see the stuff that's just coming in from the south there. That's going to be the next wave that's moving through. Now, most of it's actually going to fall through the overnight and into the morning hours tomorrow, and then it sort of tapers off again to showers. With that, we've still got wind warnings in effect across the coastal sections of British Columbia, with wind gusts up to about 110 kilometers per hour in some areas. So this is going to be a windy one as well as that system winds up. In terms of the rain itself, so there's that wave that moves through tonight. That takes us through till tomorrow morning. And then as we head through sort of the later morning hours, it tapers off into showers. By the afternoon, we're looking at really just sort of showery conditions. Same story as we move through Saturday as well. And then Sunday, we've got another round of more steady rainfall, at least for parts of the day on Sunday, as this next wave moves through. So there's actually sort of 3 punches of rainfall with this system, but it lasts until about Sunday. All told, we're looking at in the neighborhood of about 40 to 60 millimeters of rain. After what we've seen today, that's about what we can see in addition to this by Sunday afternoon. So generally up to about 60 millimeters is what we're looking at for the Vancouver area. Winds, again, going to be a factor here. By tomorrow morning, wind gusts, especially along the Strait of Georgia there, upwards to about 60 kilometers per hour. Most of those winds coming tomorrow morning, then tapering off by Saturday. It sort of eases off once again as that system pushes through. Right now, sitting at 8 degrees in Vancouver. Seasonal temperatures across the province. You look at the forecast there heading through the next 24 hours. And the rain showers continue to push across the region. Still kind of sunny, though, out toward the eastern portions of BC. And then as we look toward the lower mainland there, we're still looking at rainfall for tomorrow and windy conditions. There's a look at your 5-day forecast, 8s for Friday and Saturday. But the good news in all of this, Monday, Tuesday, double digits, sunshine, and it looks like it's going to stay dry until till the end of next week, more or less anyway.
That's the kind of forecast I like to hear. Sunshine and double digits. Thanks so much, Nick.
Exactly. You bet, guys.
Well, it wasn't the next day, the next month, heck, it wasn't even the next year, but the cat did come back. How Spaz found his way home. Next.
Happy big birthday from all of us. Oh my. All of the residents' names.
Well, that's something you do tomorrow.
Yes, lots of reading to do.
Do you think that you would have made it this far to see your 100th birthday?
But you're there standing in my hands also. I haven't got nothing to do with it. I just got to go from day to day.
Today we are going to be having a birthday party for one of our residents. She is turning 100 years old, and this is her special day, and it doesn't stop just because of COVID. We are going to be throwing a virtual party for her this year. And it's sad that, family and friends can't physically be here, but they're a part of her special day as well.
We had planned, my wife and I, to go out and spend a day with her and take part in the celebration this afternoon. And I totally understand the restrictions and the need for the restrictions, but mixed emotions, I'm sure she would have been glad to see us. We would have been glad to see her, of course.
My mother died when I was 15, and then there's no one to stay on myself. A girl 15 years old, 4 more to feed. We had to survive on whatever we could, but I did.
Jim, do you think that attitude and those experiences are helping her now to get through this very strange and difficult time?
Very much, very much. You don't forget those things.
Pearl, how's the party going?
You can't tell everything you see and hear.
What's the secret to living a good life after 100 years?
I'll let you know next year. It's lovely, isn't it? I wish you could be here.
I wish I could too. Can I come next year? Am I invited to the 101st?
Right on. Yeah, it's really great. And I'm glad I'm here.
Distance has no effect on relationships. Your concern for your relatives, your love for them is not diminished by distance. So what you have to do is think back. Think back to the good times. Think about the hurdles, the tough times, the obstacles, and how you got through them and how they strengthen you and how they strengthen your parents. COVID is an awful thing, but put it in perspective and play by the rules, and we'll get through this. And we can celebrate that. That's another piece in the memory bank down the road.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Celebrate International Women's Day with Anita Bath at BIV's virtual Influential Women in Business Awards luncheon. Get your tickets today at BIV.com. And do you have questions about the vaccine? Tune in to CBC TV and radio on March 10th at 7 p.m. for our town hall, Our Shot, Vaccinating BC. Get all the details at cbc.ca/ourshot.
Missing for nearly 4 years, a cat from Campbell River is being embraced warmly by his family, who doubted they would ever see him again.
He was around, and then he was just gone.
Cindy Buckler says her cat, she calls Spaz, came home every night until he didn't. That was back in 2017. She feared the worst, though his love of camping, along with his hunting skills, gave her hope.
Then one day, he turned up in a trailer park 7 kilometers away, and a resident called the SPCA.
She's like, "We have your cat, Spaz." I'm like, I was in such shock. I'm like, he's been missing for like almost 4 years. I almost thought it was a joke.
Yeah, here's how this happened. The SPCA found Spaz's family after tracing his identifying ear tattoo.
As for where he's been this whole time, Buckner has no idea. She's just grateful to have him back.
Yeah, and the cat's not telling. I'm not telling you where I was. Maybe just down the street or something.
That is wild. I can't even imagine what that cat's been up to for 4 years.
Well, one thing, it didn't make it off Vancouver Island.
There you go. Well, you can always watch our newscast online anytime at cbc.ca/BC.
Next local news right here at 11 o'clock with Tina Lovgreen after the National. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.
Good night.